Do you think a lot of the history we're taught in school is outdated and correct?
I would suggest yes, but I think there are reasons for that. Our separation from source, whatever you want to call it, the energy that some people call God, that separation is actually an illusion. So that everything that we're remembering is tainted by a distortion already. The Book of Innocence is the book that really speaks to that. Even memory, as we hold it individually, is framed by a false idea.
All right, guys, we got Paul Selig here today. Just finished his 11th book, right?
That's right.
Wow. So what was this one about?
Oh, is this the 11th? I just finished the 12th. The 12th is coming out soon, so the 11th is out now.
Got it.
The 11th one, I think, was called Book of Innocence, and the one that's coming out next is called A World Made New. And the books are channeled, so they're instructions. I speak them, I don't write them. So I'm really just taking dictation from the guides that work with me.
Wow. So none of the language is from you, it's from the guides.
They're using my vocabulary, but I'm kind of like a radio. So I'm sitting in a chair and I close my eyes and I hear one phrase repeated. And then when I give voice to that phrase, the rest of it all just comes tumbling out. So there's no writing involved. The recordings are then transcribed.
Interesting.
And the unedited transcripts become the books. So there's really no fixing. It's just how my guides deliver the texts.
And who do you think these guides are? Like, what are they trying to get across?
Well, they're teachers. They're coming, I believe, to show us who we really are beyond the idea of self that we've been operating with in a collective field. And they say the collective field that we operate in is the reality that we know, but there are actually other ways of experiencing reality at higher levels.
Right.
So they're bringing us to an awareness of what that is within ourselves so that we can begin to operate there collectively.
Would you say right now we're not operating at a high level as humans?
Yeah, I would say that. I think we're trying somehow, but I think we're trying to do things through a system of history that isn't necessarily serving us. So the guides that I work with say there's the true self or the divine self or the God within. It's an aspect of us and in everybody. And there is also the personality structure that we think we are, who we think we are. And the personality structure knows itself entirely through history and the data of history, what we were taught to want or desire in the world, what you're supposed to see and what you're supposed to expect. And the divine self knows itself beyond those systems and beyond those agreements and is capable of far more than we think.
Do you think a lot of the history we're taught in school is outdated and correct?
I would suggest yes, but I think there are reasons for that. The larger reason that I understand is actually something that people don't talk about much. So the guides say that separation, our separation from source, whatever you want to call it, the energy that some people call God, that separation is actually an illusion. But our entire history is born through that lens of separation, so that everything that we're remembering is tainted by a distortion already. So it's the best that we can do, given what we have. The Book of Innocence is the book that really speaks to that, and they speak about how even memory, as we hold it individually, is framed by a false idea.
Holy crap. So you can't even trust your own memories then?
You can trust your memory at the level that it's been created at. So you can remember what your science teacher said when you were 12, if you want to, and that was a version of a reality that was applicable at that time. And now, years later, you look at those things differently and we have different information. So it's not to discount the old stuff, it's to say that there are higher ways or other ways of perceiving it.
Wow, that is fascinating. What is the 12th book about?
12th book is really how the world, the physical reality that we know, is recreated through consciousness, and how aligning to the higher level of who you really are calls into agreement, which is vibrational accord. If you know anything about what people call the law of attraction, my guides speak of it a bit differently as entrainment. They say the reality that we know ourselves in now is always operative through agreement. We're always claiming into manifestation a reality based on what we expect. And so this is what happens when you start to operate at a higher vibrational level, and then what you begin to call to yourself is altered as a result of that. They say that reality as we know it, they call it an octave of vibration with high and low notes, and that everything is in an octave. And there are other octaves that play concurrently with ours, simultaneously with ours, and they're lifting us to what they call the next octave up. They call it the upper room. That's their language for it. And they're talking about how we as energetic and physical beings are transposed, as in music, to be played at a higher level. And so that's the instruction.
Wow. So how do people know their vibration level, their frequency level?
I think, well, the one thing to do is to sort of look at your life and look at your reality, and what you're calling to yourself. I mean, that's one way. But I think that there's two ways of doing it. So people in the spiritual community sometimes say, we're creating everything. You created your illness. You created this.
Right.
And my guides say, well, there's some truth to that, but also the collective is creating. So how we experience anything in a collective way, this is a chair, this is a screen, this is a studio, that's language that we all know in a common way to claim a reality. And when you stop sort of abiding in the common field, you begin to experiencing things somewhat differently.
Wow. When did you realize you had this sort of ability of channeling?
I wasn't looking for it. I was a college teacher, but when I was 25, I hit a wall. I had a master's from Yale. I'd just gotten out. I had a career that looked like it was going to fly. And I hit a real wall, and I basically bottomed out. And I was in a hotel room in St. Paul, didn't know where to get the drugs in St. Paul. And, the Gideons leave these books in drawers in hotel rooms, and I took it out, and I was raised an atheist.
Oh, wow.
And it said, prayer for people in crisis. And so I said it. And then 3 days later, I was back in New York City where I was living. And I asked myself what I could do that day that was positive, and I heard a voice, and it was the first voice. They told me what to do, and I did it.
Wow.
And I, quit partying, and I started to open up spiritually and psychically at the same time. So my psychic abilities were really the byproduct, I think, of some big changes that I don't know if I had a lot of control over. Then I had an experience a few months later that people said sounded like a spontaneous Kundalini awakening. It was energy sort of moving up through my body and out through my top of my head. And then I started seeing little lights around people. And then to get a context for that, I studied a form of energy healing. And I found out that when I had my hands on people, I could hear things for them that they would prove out.
Whoa.
And so once I began to realize that some of what I was getting was trustworthy, I began to basically fine-tune the radio. And I did little groups that met in my apartment for about 18 years. I wasn't looking for a career at this or to do books. I had this other career in academia. But eventually they began to dictate books. That didn't happen until I was 48. So that's a little while ago. And they said, we have a book to write, and if you take 2 weeks, we'll do it. And they delivered the first book in 2 weeks and 2 days. And that was the first now of 12.
Incredible. So all really recent.
The last 14 years, yeah.
So about a book a year almost.
Pretty much.
Yeah. So you are also a psychic. So that's different from channeling.
I think it's different. The channeling, I'm a radio. So if I'm hearing my guides, they're the station that I'm in broadcast with. When I work psychically, I'm tuning into people and they become the coordinate that I listen for. So if I don't talk to dead people. I mean, it's rare, it happens, but that's not my thing.
Got it.
But if you haven't talked to your best friend in 5 years and you give me his name, I can probably step into him and, hear him.
Wow.
Sometimes I'll start to resemble them as well. So they call me a medium for the living. And it's just, it's a form of clairsentience. I feel what it's like, and a form of clairaudience. I hear.
Have you seen people be able to change their psychic, like say you tell them something and it's going to happen in X amount of time? Is that possible to change?
I don't do a lot of predictive work. I think we have free will, yes. And so I'm cautious around predictions.
Okay.
I think that, when I get information for somebody like that, it's because there's something for them to know. Not because they want to hear it, or because it's going to be convenient for them to get the information. Other people work that way. It's just not how I work.
Yeah, that always scared me.
I think there's a reason for that. I mean, it's, I had somebody do my astrology chart once, maybe 15 years ago, and he said, your one chance for romance was in 1981 and you blew it. And I left like miserable, and honestly, that was his interpretation. I would never say that to somebody.
Right.
But, there's my guides say something simple. They say, what you bless, which is what you see the presence of the divine upon, blesses you in return, and what you damn or what you curse damns you back. And it's kind of like that. So if somebody gives you something like that, you've kind of been damned, and you're stuck with it unless you want to change your mind.
That's crazy. What about numerology? Have your guides said anything about that?
Yeah, I don't know. Not a thing.
Okay.
Nope.
Because that seems to be growing on social media, but
I don't disbelieve in it. I think everything has relevance. I work in a specific way. I'm not big on the spiritual toolkit. I'm this odd guy who lived in New York, who taught college for 25 years, who didn't expect that this would become his life. But I've been very dedicated to what I do. But I work in a very specific way, and the guides that come through me are teachers.
Got it.
And they teach a very specific thing, and they teach in a way that comes with a lot of energy. So the books the guides write, they say, are energetic attunements that work directly with the reader. When the first book came out, which was in 2010, people started leaving these reviews saying, I'm reading this book and my body is vibrating. I'm reading this book and I'm seeing auras. And there's always been phenomena attached to this work.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I like it because you can't fake it. So if you're in a room with 100 people and the guides say, we're coming in and we're going to fill the room with our energy, and everybody feels it, it's kind of a wonderful experience.
Right.
And what it does is give people their own experience to validate, because I'm not a spiritual teacher. I'm not a guru. I have no interest in being either of those things. It's not my trip. It's somebody else's, and they're welcome to have it. But I like being party to this. It's exciting for me, and it helps. It's helped me enormously.
Absolutely. Being able to read auras can help you a lot, I feel like. Know who to avoid, who to talk to.
I don't know. I don't read them by seeing them. I mean, when I step into people, I feel them. And so I'm super sensitive in a way.
Got it.
And I can feel energies, but I don't always know where they're coming from. It's not always convenient. If somebody's angry with me, usually I'll fear them. If they're talking crap, the right ear if it's a male, left ear if it's a female. But I don't necessarily know who it is. I just know that it's happening. Sometimes it'll start. I'll open up the email and somebody's just sent me a rageful letter. I'll go, that was them.
Yeah.
But
Interesting.
that's just, it just comes with the territory.
Wow. So right ear is a male talking.
For me. Sometimes it's a gay woman too in the right ear. I've had that happen. Yeah. It just seems to be the energy that's being held and how I process it.
So everyone has their own energy field, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Can't
believe that
avoid
too.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, certain people, you can really feel it.
Yeah. But you can begin to befriend it and work with it. And you can begin to, find out how much light there actually is within you by exploring that and then feeling it and then seeing what it does in your world.
Yeah.
Because it will have effect. There's no question.
Is it something you think can be changed?
Yeah. Yeah. Mine's changed completely, I think. I mean, I think that I had to be maybe rebooted or refined in order to do the work that I do.
Right.
And my energy was pretty dark and pretty dense when I was a kid. Oh, yeah, I wasn't a happy camper at all. I had, platinum blonde Billy Idol hair and a lot of leather, and I smoked 4 packs of cigarettes a day.
Wow.
And yeah, I was the last person, that people expected to do this.
Yeah, what a transformation. And you were atheist.
I was an atheist, yeah.
But now you feel like you have a lot more purpose in life?
I have a life that I like and I'm grateful for. It's a life that I wouldn't have dreamed I could have. There's peace in a way that I didn't know was possible. Not all the time, but a whole bunch of the time.
Nice.
So I've come to a place as a result of this work and allowing this work and trusting what they have to say to refine my energy field. And the benefit of that is you become in vibrational accord with different things. See, the guides I work say we're always calling a reality to us. I mean, you can do this if you want, but they call this little thing the mudra of creation. They say, it's like if you imagine you're floating on a raft in the ocean and you're calling the current to you. Our energy field is always doing this. Our consciousness is always doing this. So I call this neutral, divine neutral, But if you were to do this, you say, I have a right to be here. And, you can feel that that's what you're in congruence in. When people do this, and they go, nobody has a right to be here but me, your arms are going to get super heavy. And you're still calling things to you. That's the reality that you operate in. And the higher claim, everybody has the right to be, will claim something else for you. But when you move into those alignments, your reality changes. When the collective changes its mind about how things can operate, the collective reality will change as well.
Right. So when you say collective, does that mean every living thing is connected?
I believe so, yeah.
Wow.
I believe it is. I mean, the guides I work with say there is one note sung in the entire universe that's in manifestation as all things. And that the only real problem that we have as a species, they say, is what they call the denial of the divine. which is what God or whatever you want to call that, doesn't really matter what you call it, that one energy, that one note sung, that one idea of source, that must be in all things or it can be in nothing. You really don't get to have it both ways. It can't just be in the people that I like or the people that agree with me or the people that abide by the religion that I like, because then you're back in separation. It doesn't work that way, I understand.
Yeah, that's a massive shift I've made recently. Just I used to not care for animals as much and plants and everything, but now I really can feel their energy almost.
You can. And the more once you realize that you can, it's going to strengthen. It's like a muscle. So once you give it permission to be there, it's there. When I was maybe 30 and I watched this old Italian lady, she was Irish, she married an Italian in this room who was an energy healer and one of the first big ones of a certain era. And she said, okay, everybody, I'm going to bring in this energy and you're all going to ask for something and you're going to get it. And I felt like somebody had plugged me into a light socket. I was just vibrating head to toe.
Wow.
And what that woman did at that time was she gave me permission to believe that something was possible because I could feel it myself. Nobody was doing anything. It was happening. And that gave me permission to know that it was possible. And in some ways, somebody like me who comes from somewhat traditional background, the fact that this is something that's available and I can do these things that are provable. I mean, I've been filmed stepping into people who I've never met and taking on their physical maladies and all of those things. Yeah, I mean, it's something that is there. That gives people permission to know that not only is it possible, but perhaps also that we're all connected in ways we don't even see.
Absolutely. Your guides have said this quote, a world made new. What does that look like?
Well, a world made new, I believe, is a world that is operating at a higher level of accord. And they're saying A-C-C-O-R-D or A-C-H-O-R-D as if on a piano, the resonance of the world. They talk about it as a world that doesn't hold a bias in fear. So the common field or the octave of reality that we know ourselves in, they say, is basically entrenched in fear.
Right.
It's kind of like we all got born into a pool that somebody already peed in and we don't know it. It's just what we're used to.
Yeah.
So we're used to fear. They said in a workshop just last weekend in Denver, they said, imagine that there's a painting on the wall of the room that you're in, and it's incredibly violent. And you're trying to go about your business, and you're feeding your kid, and you're doing your thing, but that painting is always there informing how you do anything. You're not thinking about it, but it's informing everything. And that's kind of the reality that we operate in. So they say, the guides I work with say that fear does not express in the higher octave. It's just not there. And so in the workshops they do, the guides will bring everybody to what they call the upper room or the next octave, and they'll say, what are you afraid of? And nobody has anything.
Wow.
You have to go back downstairs to feel it.
Interesting.
It is interesting because the guides say the action of fear is to claim more fear. And they say, look at every choice you've ever made in your life in fear, and you'll see that it got you more of the same. And when you stop making choices in fear, your life begins to change. And we all stop agreeing to that. Because basically war is fear-based and greed is fear-based. There's not going to be enough. I have to get more. All of that thinking. When that stuff isn't there, we have a very different world.
That is great to know because a lot of people have fears.
Yeah.
So it's better just to get rid of them.
I think I don't know if it's about, if you can get rid of them, great. I mean, I had to learn how to move through them, many of them. You can't pretend that stuff isn't there.
Right.
The book that they delivered, maybe 2016 or something, it was called The Book of Truth. And they said what humanity is about to go through is a period of excavation. And if you imagine your backyard is like an archaeological site and stuff is being dug up from 5 years ago and 5,000 years ago, it's going to look like hell. It's going to be a big mess. But the purpose is to exhume or to bring up the things that were buried and hidden. And the point of that is to see what's there so that it can be altered. You can't change what you're not willing to look at or see.
Absolutely. Have they said anything about the future of humanity?
Yeah, actually some. And they've said humanity's going to make it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
That's exciting.
Well, it is exciting, but they say it's going to be it's about 3 generations down the road. I think they said 4 generations until we really begin to see the change.
Oh, okay.
But they say that the people being born now are being born with a different level of awareness, and they're not as entrenched in the old. And the culture that we have now that's been established, people aren't buying into a lot of the stuff that people my age were taught to believe.
Right.
Things are changing too rapidly. So I hear it's hopeful. I mean, they say if we want to learn the futility of war by fighting until there's nobody left, we can do that. But they don't think it's going to happen. They say it won't.
I hope not. Because with the weapons we have these days,
That's what they say.
Yeah, it could end very quick.
Yeah, that's what they say. I mean, this is the fact that we've built weapons of mass destruction on the belief that a bomb is going to keep us safe, they say, is the most ridiculous thing ever. Bombs are actually intended to go off.
Apparently, these nukes affect more than just the physical realm.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, they're affecting like everything. I don't know if you believe in multiple dimensions or anything, but
I believe in it.
yeah.
Yep.
In what way?
Well, I believe that we're operating in multiple levels at all times, So the upper room that the guides I work with speak about, I expect is probably what other people are calling the fifth dimension or 5D. I expect that, but they don't use that jargon, so I won't verify it. But when I'm working with people, I used to think, put it this way, I used to think that if I was stepping into somebody in China, and stepping into their body and seeing what it felt like to be them, I was traveling to China. And it was actually a physicist, Dean Radin, who said to me, you're not traveling, you're going in. You're going in, you're sort of moving through.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I think that's very, very true because it's too instantaneous.
Right. So astral projection, or is that something different?
That's something different, yeah.
Okay. What about dreams? Do you get any messages in your dreams?
I get messages a lot in dreams, yeah.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, but they're from me mostly. Once in a while I've gotten world stuff, but it was basically as it affected me. Before 9/11, I had a dream. I was living in New York at the time of, these two pillars of smoke, coming from across the sea.
Wow.
Yeah.
Before it happened.
Before it happened. And I also heard from my guides that it was going to happen, but I didn't believe it.
Whoa.
Well, I didn't believe it. It seemed impossible. But I had a friend who was opening a business in Lower Manhattan and wanted to know if he was going to make the rent on the business I guess it was in October. And the answer was no. And why? Because there's going to be a terrorist attack in Lower Manhattan. And that was the case. The whole neighborhood was shut down.
Crazy.
But I didn't buy it, because that's not the way that I generally access information. And I think I only got that, which was through the back door, because somebody asked a question. I wasn't looking for it.
Yeah. So if these guides know the future, they're using you as a way to alter it, perhaps?
That's interesting. I've never thought about that. I hear yes and no. They're saying, that they're supporting people in change that's available if they choose it. They're giving people away. The books are really a system of alignment to a higher level of consciousness. They're not self-help books. They're not how-to books. It's mysticism.
Right.
It's old stuff, and it's physically experientiable.
Yeah. Are these guides the same in every book, or do they change? There's
a collective. I mostly hear what feels like the same voice. Once in a while, there's another voice that'll show up because the accent will change. And that's just what it is, but it's a group.
Oh, so you hear their voice.
I hear the voice in my head, and then I whisper the words as they come, and then I repeat them. So if you ever watch video of me channeling, I'm whispering and repeating. It's like it's crazy. It's a lot of work.
Wow.
But it's like if you can imagine reading ticker tape, or fortune cookies, one after the other. I hear phrase. I don't hear the whole thing. I hear and repeat each phrase, and then the phrases, when you put them together, is a lecture or a book.
Have you encountered any interesting beings like aliens or anything like that?
Not, no. I mean, in terms of this work, no. I mean, the guides I work with, somebody once said, another psychic once said, your guides have a red velvet rope around you to keep out the riffraff because their work is specific. And I think it's one of the reasons I'm not talking to a lot of dead people. Once in a while it'll happen in the context of a reading, but I tend to get people when they were still alive.
Got it.
So if you want to know about your uncle who's crossed, I might get him, but I might get him as he was at the end of his life, or as he was in relationship to the dynamic with you, if there's something to be healed from that period of his life, of your life.
Right. How do you view time? Do you see it linear?
I understand our abiding in the idea of linear time. I think time is a construct that we agree to. I think it's a useful construct. But I think really everything is happening now in the infinite now, always.
Right. So you just live in the present moment.
Well, as best I can, but I know, what day to take the garbage out, and I know, what time to show up for an appointment. So, I mean, time is the divine self, You see, the divine self, which is really the basis of their teaching, whatever you want to call it, abides in the eternal now. It's not stuck in time. It's not trapped by time and space. And if you go to, I guess, spiritual theory and of any kind, God has got to be more powerful than the idea of time and space, or what is it?
Right.
So this is our reality here. We do our best with it.
What was the most challenging teachings the guides brought you?
Most challenging teaching? There's a lot of them. I have a hard time with a lot of them. Not very little of this stuff is convenient to how I want to see the world, and it'll mess with you. I was channeling in Canada, in Calgary, on a weekend, and I did my workshop Saturday. I woke up Sunday morning, and there was all of the news about there was a shooting at the Pulse nightclub in Florida. It was the biggest mass killing at the time.
Oh, was that the gay club?
Yep.
Yeah, I remember that.
And I woke up to that story, and then I had to go channel. And the guides gave a lecture on how to deal with an atrocity, which is challenging stuff. Unfortunately, I don't remember. That was actually up online. We just threw that up the next day because it was pertinent, and people were asking, what do your guides say about things like this? But if there's a simple teaching that the guides give you, which is who you put in darkness and what you put in darkness calls you to that darkness. It's really simple. It's a teaching of co-resonance again. In one of their books, they say, imagine you're going up a mountain and there's a cave, and the one person you never want to see again as long as you live is in that cave. And your job is to escort them out, because the guides say, well, you're the one that put them there. And so you get to take them out. Now, the purpose of doing that is not to let them off the hook. It's to liberate yourself from the attachment that has put you in darkness. And it's true. This is just look at your own lives.
Yeah.
It's the thing that keeps you up at night, the relationship that's unresolved, the person that you can't forgive. That's all attachment and a bondage to the lower. When you let go of those things, you free up all that energy and you begin to have another experience of yourself.
Right. So when you say darkness, is that like depression, anxiety, all that mental health stuff?
No. It's like what you damns you back. Who you say isn't worthy of being here, who you put your anger at. So depression, all those things, I've known those things, God knows, and worked through a lot of them. But when you do this kind of work, I'm not a rainbows and unicorns kind of guy. My path hasn't been easy. When I got sober at 25, I was basically penniless with an Ivy League degree. Oh yeah, I had to learn everything all over again. And I learned things differently than I thought I would. And I ended up with a very different life than I would have expected. And a better one, really, but one that I wouldn't have said, well, let's go be a psychic now. It's the last thing I thought I would ever be and wanted to be,
Especially graduating from Yale.
Well, yeah, but so what? Do you know what I mean? I've read for people that have been very psychic, that have been, and they don't talk about it, judges, police sergeants, housewives. Some of the best psychics I know are these people sitting at their kitchen tables, and they've been doing it for 30 years, and they're just brilliant.
Yeah.
They're not looking for the spotlight. This is just a way of being in the world. We all have the capacity for this. We just have to, first of all, know that it's possible. Because if we say we can't have it, we're not going to get it. So to say it's possible is the first step, and then to begin to sort of become willing to receive what it brings you, which isn't always convenient.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope to see more people get in tune with their abilities, because it was shunned upon for a bit of time.
Still is. Not the way it was. You and I are having this conversation now.
Yeah.
When I started opening up, it was 1987, and people weren't having these conversations in this way.
Right.
Now it seems like everybody's a shaman and everybody's doing Reiki and everybody's doing this. And a lot of that's wonderful. But the woman that I studied with when I was very young was one of the first 13 Reiki masters in the U.S. There were very few people at that time who were doing that kind of work.
Yeah. So how does Reiki work? I've never looked into that.
It's a form of energy healing. I actually didn't study Reiki with her. She was doing her own thing by that time, which was called Marielle, which was working with the energy of the divine feminine. And she was talking about the divine feminine before it was part of the popular zeitgeist, and people were Instagramming about that. That was a form of the laying on of hands that would involve pulling out the energetic blocks that were held in the body just by hand, and you could feel the energy leave.
Wow.
And that was exciting because I could feel it, so I knew it was real. I could feel this, fear feels prickly like steel wool. pain feels like broken glass coming out at your hand, and old stuff would come out like a wind, like a cold wind out of the body.
Incredible.
It really was. And that's where I started to hear. I was volunteering at a center. At that time, it was the height of the AIDS epidemic. I was volunteering at a center for people that were living with life-challenging illness that Marianne Williamson had started in Lower Manhattan. And that's where I found out that I could hear things for people. So I would have my hand on somebody's chest, and I'd say, "Who's Arthur?" And they'd say, "My father, my son, my lover, my dog, whatever." And then all the energy would move. And that's when I began to say, okay, I'm tuning into something. And I began to trust it and began to work with it more.
That is cool. So Marianne, that's a politician, right?
She's a politician now, yeah. But she's also, was and is a spiritual teacher.
I love that. She's been on the show, actually.
Terrific.
Yeah, that was a good episode. So a lot of people seem to die with these regrets, and that's what you're talking about, the energy that you're pulling out, right?
Not necessarily the regrets, their trauma, their fear. I don't do table work anymore. I don't work hands-on, but I found that I can do a lot of this stuff without any touch. You can just do it with intention, and you can support people in releasing what they need to. And my guides do this. I'm just there. I'm just there for the show. I'm just there to take the dictation as much as possible. But regrets are one thing. But, if, for example, people people that don't express themselves, they're usually blocked at the throat. You can release the energy block at the throat. Right. Sometimes that's self-recrimination, the self-talk that's negative. Sometimes it's unexpressed anger. There's lots of things that get held in the body. So
yeah, I had the throat chakra block actually for a big part of my life. Yeah. Fixing that is how I got into podcasting.
Terrific.
Yeah. But a lot of people have blocks they don't even know about because they're so used to it.
Yeah, that's true. They think it's who they are. And that's because it's who you think you were, you think that's how you're going to be. It's not necessarily true at all.
Yeah. Did you have any blocks when you were coming up?
I had tons of blocks. Are you kidding me? However you name it, I probably had it. I mean, I was a fat, bullied kid, so I was scared and angry. I had, I think, grandiosity and no self-esteem, which is a place to come from, which is, I'm really talented, but I think I'm crap. I had to work through a lot of this stuff on the way up. And I also, had to learn how to be a grown-up, which I hadn't learned somehow. I really had to learn that. I mean, like I took all these student loans out when I was a grad student. I didn't know that I was supposed to pay them back. I really thought they were giving me money because I was special. Oh yeah, I really did. And then, when you default and you're standing there with, a negative $100,000 balance in your bank account going, what the hell happened? You learn how to be a grown up.
Yeah. And that's a lot back then too.
That was a lot back then.
Geez.
Yeah.
I mean, now they're like 300, but inflation. So
it was a lot back then.
Yeah.
But I dealt with it, I learned. But I'm 62 years old and I'm just learning to drive now. So I'm a slow learner. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Why'd you wait so long?
Well, I lived in New York my whole life. And you don't really need to. Now I live in the rainforest.
Yeah.
Where you can't walk to anything. I can walk to a waterfall.
That's cool.
But that's about it.
So has the change of scenery helped you tune in more?
It's changed my experience of being myself, and that's helped me tune in more. But I think that you can do your work wherever you are, and I think the idea that you have to be on a holy place to do this kind of stuff is it's interesting, but every place is holy if you let it be.
Right.
You see, it's really what you bring to it. So I got my initial spirituality in the trenches, really. During an epidemic and in recovery and things like that. None of this was convenient or fashionable. It's just what happened. And because of that, I think I learned lessons that I wouldn't have gotten any other way. And now I'm having a bit of an easier time with that.
Nice.
I look out and it's beautiful.
That's great. You seem very good at just insulating yourself, focusing on what you're doing, not letting outside noise get to you.
I have to with what I do. Yeah, I have to. I mean, channeling is that. I mean, I'm literally, what I do, I don't think of it as that special. It's almost like stenography. Like the court stenographer is just sitting there doing the thing. The transcripts are what's important, or whoever's giving the transcript, that's what's important. And I look at that as my role. And I'm good at showing up for it.
Yeah. Which one of your books resonated with the most people, you'd say, out of the 11?
I think the first book, I Am the Word, which is really the primer for all the books that follow, because people were reading that thing and having these big experiences from the top, and that still happens.
Wow.
And all of the books work, but they build on that. So people can enter in at any one of the books and have an experience. The guides say they teach in a one-room schoolhouse. So anybody who shows up is going to get the teaching at the level that they can receive it. But the first book in some ways is sort of like the Rosetta Stone or the foundational text for everything that they've done since then. And they begin to talk about, I think the seed of every following book that they've dictated is probably held in the first book at some level. Yeah.
Can't wait to listen to it. Is it on Audible?
It's on Audible. They all are, yeah.
Nice. Can't wait. Anything else you want to promote?
Promote? I have a website. It's my name, paulselig.com. I channel online every week. Every month I do an online intensive and I tour. And there's a lot of books in print and you can get them at any bookseller, online, or wherever you like.
Amazing. We'll link it below. Any closing messages for the people watching this?
Yeah, stop thinking of yourself as separate. And perhaps instead as one of the whole. I think it'll change everything.
Love that. Thanks so much, Paul. That was a great episode.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Thanks for watching, guys. See you tomorrow.